Addiction doesn't happen all at once. It sneaks in, slowly taking control until nothing else matters except the next fix. The secret weight. John gagged as the man's grip tightened in his hair, forcing him down. The stench of sweat, piss, and cheap cologne clung to the alley walls, mixing with the garbage and filth beneath his knees. He tried not to breathe through his nose, tried not to think about how disgusting this was, how disgusting he was. But he needed the money, needed the escape that came with it. Above him, the man let out a low groan, his belt clinking as he thrust shallowly. His wedding band glinted under the flickering streetlight. John knew the type. They always had a story. Not really into guys, just need to take the edge off. No one could ever know, but none of that mattered. This wasn't about connection. This was a transaction. When it was over, John wiped his mouth on the back of his sleeve, forcing himself to swallow down the self-loathing. A crumpled 20 landed in his palm, damp from the man's sweaty grip. Don't tell nobody. The guy muttered before shuffling off, zipping up as he disappeared down the alley. John exhaled sharply, shoving the bill into his pocket. $20. Not even enough for a full hit, but it was something. His hand shook as he pulled out his phone. Screen cracked from too many falls, too many nights stumbling home in a fog. He tapped out a text to his dealer. Need to see you. Now. His skin was crawling, his brain screaming for relief. The heroin had its claws deep in him now, wrapped tight around his soul, like a snake squeezing the life out of its prey. He couldn't think straight, couldn't breathe right until the next fix. Tyler didn't know. Not really. He knew John had used before, back in college, back when it was just someone to party with. But John had been clean when they met, working a decent job, keeping his life together. Tyler saw the charm, the easy smile, the version of John that existed before the needle, before the alley. And John worked hard to keep it that way. He showered when he got home, brushed his teeth twice, used mouthwash until his gums burned. He kept his lies clean, his stories airtight. Late at work, helping a friend. Phone died, but the truth was filthier than he'd ever admit. John slid down the alley wall, legs weak, head spinning, his gut clenched, not just from hunger but from something darker. Withdrawal creeping in, the familiar sickness curling in his stomach like a warning. His dealer texted back. 30 minutes. 30 minutes felt like a lifetime. He closed his eyes, leaning his head back against the brick, trying not to let the tremors take over. The taste of the man still lingered in his mouth, but all he could think about was the rush, the warmth, that beautiful, numbing nothingness. Just one more hit, then he'd stop. He had to stop, didn't he? The alleyway. John wiped the back of his hand across his mouth, breathing heavily as he leaned against a damp brick wall. His knees ached from the cold pavement, and his fingers trembled as he pulled a cigarette from his pocket. He didn't even smoke, not really, but sometimes after a job like that, he needed something to hold, something to distract him from the taste that lingered on his tongue. The alley smelled like stale beer, piss, and regret. He should be disgusted. Should be, but he was too far gone for that now. This was just another night, another dollar, another step deeper into the hole he swore he'd climb out of. John's dealer, Rico, rolled up in his rusted-out Civic, bass thumping so loud it rattled the broken streetlight above. The passenger window rolled down, smoke pouring out. You got my money? Rico's voice was smooth, knowing. John pulled out the crumpled bills from his pocket. They were damp with sweat. Maybe his, maybe the guy's from earlier. Didn't matter. Money was money. Rico snatched it, counted quick, then handed over a small baggie. Inside, the brown powder was calling him, whispering sweet promises of numbness, of escape. You look like shit, Rico muttered, eyeing him. You need to chill, man. John just nodded, shoving the bag into his pocket, like it was sacred, like it was the answer to everything wrong inside him. He made it home before Tyler. Just barely. The second the door clicked shut behind him, he bolted to the bathroom, locking it tight. Hands shaking, he dumped the powder onto the counter, rolling up a bill, not even hesitating. The first inhale sent fire through his nose, into his veins, settling his chest like a warm, suffocating hug. The second had him exhaling, eyes rolling back as the world dulled, softened, disappeared. He slumped against the wall, smiling lazily at the ceiling. This was better. This was what he needed. And maybe, just maybe, he'd be okay. The faces of the alley. John learned that every man who came to the alley had a secret, a craving, a hunger they didn't dare name in the daylight. They never kissed him, never touched him beyond what was necessary. They just took what they needed, left cash in his palm, and disappeared into the night. Mike, the construction worker. Mike always smelled like sweat and sawdust, his rough hands fumbling with his belt as he mumbled about his wife. "She don't touch me anymore," he'd say, as if that justified what he was about to do. John knelt, letting the man's hands grip his hair, guiding his head with slow, desperate movements. Mike groaned, the need in his voice turning guttural as he thrust deeper, his body trembling for more than just pleasure. He finished with sharp inhale, backing away quickly, stuffing himself back into his jeans. The $20 bill he shoved into John's hand was damp with sweat. "Don't look at me," Mike muttered, before stumbling out of the alley like he could outrun the truth of what just happened. Adam, the church deacon. Adam was always in a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled up just enough to reveal strong forearms. The gold cross around his neck glinted under the alley lights, swaying as he pressed John face first against the brick wall. There were no words, just a rough hand yanking John's jeans down, a hungry grunt as Adam positioned himself behind him. It was fast, hard. Each thrust sent a sharp scrape of brick against John's cheek. Adam's fingers dug into his hips, holding him still, making sure he took every inch. His breathing grew ragged, his grip tightening before his body shuddered with release. And then, just as quickly, he was done. Adam pulled away, adjusting his belt with the same calm he might have after delivering a Sunday sermon. A $100 bill was placed in John's open palm, followed by the quiet murmur of a prayer. Then he was gone. Ray, married father of three. Ray always claimed he wasn't into guys, but every time he showed up, it was clear he was lying to himself. Unlike the others, he didn't want to take. He wanted to be taken. He wanted to be owned, controlled. His wedding band caught the light as he pulled his jeans down, positioning himself on all fours against a stack of crates. "Don't tell nobody," he whispered, glancing over his shoulder, eyes flickering with anticipation. John knelt behind him, gripping Ray's hips as he slid inside, pushing deep. Ray gasped, his whole body shuddering as he exhaled a moan. He tried too hard to hold back. He liked it rough. The harder John went, the more he begged for it. But when it was over, the pleasure drained from his face. His expression tightened as he stood, yanking up his jeans. "You ain't gonna tell nobody, right?" His voice was sharp, filled with the fear of being exposed. John just took the money and walked away. Ray would be back next week. He always came back. The aftermath. John never said a word to any of them. He didn't care enough to. He went home with pockets full of cash and a stomach full of disgust. He scrubbed his skin, his hands, his mouth, but the feeling never left. So he got high. The needle went in. The world blurred. And for a little while, he didn't have to be John. He didn't have to be anything at all. The night, everything changed. Tyler hadn't meant to be out this late. The evening had unfolded slowly. Errands, a drink with a friend, and then the unexpected decision to cut through the alley behind their apartment complex. He'd been trying to give John space lately, but the excuses were piling up, each one more convincing than the last. John had been too busy, working late, or out running errands that never seemed to add up. Tyler had tried to let it slide, but tonight, something gnawed at him. The alley was darker than usual, the kind of place that felt a little too quiet, too empty. The flickering street lamp cast just enough light to reveal the shape of a body, hunched down low. At first, Tyler thought nothing of it, but as he neared, his stomach twisted in recognition. The figure was unmistakable. John. But it wasn't just John standing there. Tyler's heart dropped as he saw another man, a stranger, tall and muscular, his hands tangled in John's hair, forcing him down. The sound of labored breathing filled the space, and for a sickening moment, Tyler froze. His stomach churned, bile rising in his throat. His mind refused to believe it, even as he watched John's head bobbing between the stranger's legs. Tyler's breath caught in his chest, and before he could even process what he was seeing, their eyes locked. John's gaze was desperate, wide with shock. The stranger's eyes flickered toward Tyler, but neither man moved. Time seemed to stand still. Tyler's world shattered in an instant. A heavy wave of betrayal hit him like a slap, sharp and stinging. He wasn't sure what hurt more, the sight of John's shameful surrender or the fact that he had no idea just how deep the lies went. His lips parted, but no words came. He felt like he was choking, suffocating on betrayal. The raw, burning rage rose in him, but there was no anger, only a searing ache that made his knees weak. Without a second thought, he turned. His shoes scraped against the pavement as he walked away. Every step was a deeper cut into his heart, but there was no turning back. John was nothing more than a shadow now, a ghost of the man he thought he knew. Tyler, wait! John's voice broke the silence, weak and frantic. But Tyler didn't stop. His back stayed to him, cold and unfeeling. John stumbled to his feet, the urgency in his movements futile. He was lost now, running after Tyler, chasing the pieces of their relationship that were already slipping away. He caught up breathless, his hands reaching out. Please, I didn't mean for you to find out this way. But Tyler didn't want to hear it. His entire body screamed for release, for escape from betrayal that hung thick in the air. He couldn't look at John the same way again. The man he loved, the man he thought he knew, was gone, replaced by someone he didn't even recognize. The thought of him, on his knees, with another man's hands forcing him into submission, was too much to bear. John's voice trembled, a mix of apology and desperation, but Tyler didn't stop. He couldn't stop. He walked faster, and the sound of John's pleas grew quieter until they disappeared completely. The breaking point. Tyler didn't know how to feel after that night. His body still trembled from the shock of seeing John in that alleyway. The betrayal was almost physical, a weight that pressed on his chest and made it hard to breathe. He couldn't unsee it, couldn't erase the image of John on his knees, the desperation in his eyes. The lies, the secrecy, it was all too much. But love doesn't always work like that. It doesn't just vanish because something dark is exposed. It lingers, twisting inside you like a knife, even as the hurt swallowed him whole. Tyler couldn't let go of the love he had for John. Not yet. The man he loved had broken him, but Tyler wasn't sure he was ready to be completely broken. It was late when Tyler stood in front of the door to their apartment, his hand on the knob, hesitating. John was inside, probably pacing, maybe crying. Tyler didn't know what to expect. All he knew was that he couldn't walk away just yet. His heart, however bruised, still cared too much. He opened the door, the familiar creak of the hinges, sending a shiver down his spine. John was sitting on the couch, his hands clasped together in his lap, his gaze fixed on the floor. The tension between them was palpable, thick like smoke in a room. Tyler stood still, waiting for John to speak first, but the silence stretched out, suffocating. He finally took a deep breath and broke it. John! Tyler's voice was low, strained, but there was no turning back. What the hell happened? Why? Why didn't you tell me? John's eyes were glassy, filled with regret. I didn't want you to know, he stammered, his voice hoarse. I didn't want to hurt you. He stood up, his hands reaching out, but Tyler took a step back, holding up a hand to stop him. Don't, Tyler said sharply, his voice hard, though it cracked in the middle. I saw it, John. I saw you. I saw everything. John winced, the shame flooding his face. I'm sorry. I don't know what's wrong with me. It's the drugs. They make me do things. I don't even remember half of it. Please, you have to believe me. I never wanted this to happen. Tyler wanted to scream. He wanted to rage at him, tell him that this was unforgivable, that everything they had was a lie. But something in his gut, something deeper than the hurt and the anger, stopped him. He could see the vulnerability in John's eyes. He could see the cracks, the signs of a man who was broken and reaching out for help, even if he didn't know how. Are you using? Tyler asked, his voice barely above a whisper. But the question cut through the room like a razor. John went silent, his eyes filled with tears, and he nodded slowly. Yeah, he admitted, his voice barely audible. I am. I don't know how it got this bad, but I need help, Tyler. I need to get clean. I can't keep doing this. Tyler stared at him for a long moment, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. He wasn't sure if he could ever trust John again, not after what he'd seen. But he couldn't deny the part of him that still wanted to believe in their love. He had to know if John could fight this, if he could find a way back from the edge. Get help? Tyler said, his voice breaking with emotion. Or I walk away for good. I can't keep doing this. John's eyes were wide, his face pale. He was trembling, the enormity of the ultimatum hitting him like a ton of bricks. He swallowed hard, his throat dry, but he didn't hesitate. I will, he said, the words a promise, a fragile one. I'll do anything. Just don't leave me. Tyler didn't say anything for a long moment. He just stood there, looking at the man he loved, the man who had shattered him. And then, slowly, he nodded. Then, prove it, Tyler said quietly. Prove that you're worth saving. Because I don't know how much more of this I can take. And with that, Tyler turned and left, leaving John standing there, alone, trembling with the weight of his own choices. The road to recovery. The next day, Tyler didn't know what to expect. He had been sitting in a quiet, tortured limbo all night, replaying every moment, every word. The hurt lingered, but something else had taken root in its place. Uncertainty. It was as if the love they shared was no longer enough to fix everything that had gone wrong. Tyler wasn't sure if anything could, but the faint glimmer of hope inside him still wanted to believe. John had left that night to check into a treatment center, a place that promised to help him find his way back from the brink. Tyler had insisted, demanded, he get help. If he was ever going to have a chance at trust again, it had to start there. It was the hardest thing he'd ever done, giving John one last shot, knowing it might not be enough. The days that followed felt like an eternity. Tyler didn't visit immediately. He wanted to, but something inside him resisted, like he needed to see if John would fight for himself first. Would he take the chance to get clean, or would he disappear into the darkness once more? Tyler tried to keep himself busy. Work was the same, endless meetings, monotonous reports, the usual distractions. But the nights were harder. That was when the memories returned. The image of John in that alley, the stranger's hands, the look in his eyes as he realized Tyler had seen everything. He couldn't shake it. He thought about the drugs, the desperation, the shame. How long had it been going on? How much of their life together had been a lie? But as the days passed, Tyler started to see a change in John's messages. They weren't just half-hearted apologies anymore. There was something raw in his words, something that felt like a man who was finally waking up from a long, twisted nightmare. He wasn't perfect, not by a long shot, but he was fighting, and that was more than Tyler had seen in a long time. One evening, Tyler drove to the treatment center. He didn't know why he was going. Part of him was afraid to face John, to see how far the damage had gone. But the other part, the part that was still holding on to the threads of their love, needed to see him for himself. The clinic was a small, sterile place, tucked away on a quiet street. Tyler parked in the lot, his hands gripping the steering wheel as he stared at the entrance. He had no idea what to expect. Would John look different? Would he be angry? Would it be too late? He stepped out of the car and walked to the door, his heart pounding in his chest. The smell of antiseptic hit him as soon as he entered. A receptionist smiled politely at him, but he barely registered it. His eyes were fixed on the hallway, the door to the group therapy rooms at the end. Tyler was led to a small waiting area where he was told to wait until John could see him. As he sat there, the minutes crawled by. He tried to focus on his breathing to keep calm, but everything felt heavy, as if the weight of the past few days was finally catching up to him. Finally, the door opened. John stepped into the room, his face tired but clear. His usual disheveled look was gone. He looked more present, more in control. But his eyes, those same eyes Tyler had fallen in love with, held something different. A quiet plea. A hope that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of everything hung between them. "I didn't think you'd come," John finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. Tyler's throat tightened. He wasn't sure what to say. I didn't know if I would either, he admitted. John nodded slowly, pressing his lips together like he was bracing himself for the worst. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve it. But I need you to know I'm trying, Tyler, every single day. Tyler studied him, searching for signs of the man he used to know. He had spent so long feeling betrayed, feeling like their love had been a lie. But as he looked at John now, raw and vulnerable, he realized something. The addiction had stolen so much from them, but it hadn't stolen everything. Tyler swallowed hard. I don't know how to fix this, he said, his voice breaking. I don't even know if we can. John's eyes glistened. I know, and if all I get from you is this moment, I'll take it. The honesty in his voice shattered something inside Tyler. He wanted to be angry. He wanted to hold on to the pain. But standing there, seeing the man in front of him trying so desperately to change, Tyler felt something he hadn't in a long time. Hope. It wasn't a promise. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was something. Tyler took a step forward. Not an embrace. Not an ending. Just a beginning. John let out a shaky breath. I love you, Tyler. Tyler didn't respond right away. He didn't know if he was ready to say it back. But he didn't walk away either. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. For now.
Thank you so much for watching this video here on Petals and Pride. We hope you enjoyed the journey as much as we did. If you did, don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and ring that bell so you never miss out on more exciting stories and conversations. And hey, if you've got a story or experience you'd like to share, don't be shy. Reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. As always, stay fabulous, stay fierce, and remember, life's a ride, so keep blooming with pride.